think we were fairly confident with going into We Can't Dance. I was actually surprised to see that Phil was still there, actually. I fully expected him to have disappeared. He'd had so much success, you know, I thought, doesn't need us guys anymore.
After the Invisible Touch tour, I decided to... That's when I started working on my train set, if I remember rightly. And then I did some film work, so I did Buster. So that took care of a fair amount of time, preparation, filming, shooting, editing, doing that soundtrack or getting involved in that. Then I did But Seriously, which was my record between Invisible Touch and We Can't Dance, and that whole world tour thing was serious too. So there was every reason for there to be a delay.
I think at this stage we had this thing whereby we were doing a Genesis record and then solo stuff, and I was doing Mike and Mechanics now, and so you start to, you come back with just, you've learnt things, you know, and that I think that break, that variety of creative work with other people, when you kind of came back fresh, ready to appreciate what the other two did.
I was still very fully committed, and to me, I was actually more involved in We Can't Dance than any other record.
I think No Son of Mine is probably one of my most recent favourite tracks, because once again it's sort of, it's almost like the start of what we could be doing, what was the next sort of stage, you know what I mean? It's like once again a dark atmosphere. That sound Tony has was a little guitar thing I played which he looped and messed around with and made it sound like an elephant.
Trying to find a way out.
Sounds like an elephant being sick, which is a very distinctive sound. You know, again, I always like to try and get a sound in there if I can. This was, again, just sampling noise in the room, and it was just Mike actually making some, you know, thrashing around, and I just cut out this little bit in the middle of it, and then slowed it right down, and just used the front end of it, and stuck it with this E minor chord, and the effect was fantastic. I thought, this is great, I love this. And immediately, you know, then Phil started warbling on top of it, and we thought we got a song here. This sounds really good.
This album was probably the best example of the three of us improvising, and I'm singing improvising at the same time. We did it before, but this was much more so on this record, where, you know, there'd be a drum machine playing, and Mike would be playing something, Tony would be playing, and I'd be singing. And out of that stuff, like No Son of Mine, improvised most of it, well, a lot of it, not most of it, a lot of it.
If you can just set up an atmosphere sometimes, that's what it's all about. You just get a sort of a feel going. And funnily enough, what you do after it sometimes is not so important. Once you've got that initial mood, it carries you for a long, long time. And so I was very proud of that one. And then I thought the lyric that Phil wrote on top of it, I thought was one of the best as well. Really good, that.
The lyric of No Son of Mine, again, was one of those. Every time we played the thing, it was like, you know, son of mine. I know, I have no idea why I sang it. No idea at all. Just those words, they sang well. So that was a story of this kid that kind of basically was tired of going home and seeing his mother and father fighting. Father would come back having drunk too much and, you know, wallop, and he just had enough. And eventually he realised that he needed to confront this problem. So it was like it was a story.
It's probably my favourite song on the album in many ways. We play it on stage and everything, it still sends shivers down my spine. It's just a song, it seems, it's, you know, if you can do it all with sort of like, you know, a few chords and simple rhythm, then I think there's nothing to be said against that, you know.
Tony had this boom, sh, boom, boom, which he played on the keyboard. I had a guitar riff, and what I do remember actually is that I remember playing it and thinking, well, that's really quite nice, but then I couldn't find it again. I had to go back and find the tape, we recorded it, and listen over and over and over again to work it out, because it's a simple riff, but it's quite unusual the way it's actually put together.
We couldn't quite find the way to do it. We tried doing it heavy. Phil would sort of play big drums, and I was big. Nothing was really sounding very good. And one time, I got this new keyboard, which was a sort of Roland thing, and it had a sort of preset drum sound thing on it. And I just started playing along with it. It had a bass drum, there, boom, 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 like this, and then started playing these silly sounds on top of it. And the whole thing suddenly took on this completely different character. And we thought, well, this is really good. We'll do it like that. And then what we did was actually, after we'd written it, after about, we didn't do anything to it for about the next month or two, and then just said, well, we'll put that song down, the one with the guitar riff.
You know, 5 minutes work, you know, That was our classic example of, let's not do this anymore, let's just record this right now, you know. And I remember Mike was doing the guitar part again, and I was writing the lyrics in the corner on a chair and said, I'm finished, you know, and we went and did it.
And next day we had the song, and we thought, that's great, it's just so simple, you know, just keep it really, really simple. A lot of humour, and it works. A great contrast to other things we've done in our career, really. So I was, you know, pretty pleased with that as well.
But I can dance, I can talk. The only thing about me is the way that I walk.
Well, the dance is something actually that was Phil, really. I mean, we were in the studio. I can't remember what we were doing. It was a 3-day shoot in Los Angeles, and he suddenly just started doing that, you know. And it took an hour and a half to record it, and I'll always forever be known as the guy who does that. But better than Tony, I hope.
As we get older and older, the only thing that people remember about us is this walk, you know. But it's good to be remembered for something, is what I'd say, you know.
I remember reading Roger Waters doing an interview in Rolling Stone. Said, and as for Genesis, you know, doing that stupid walk with that awful song. And I kind of thought, I mean, now I've met Roger a few times, and I kind of know that, you know, he's a miserable bastard, basically. He knows, I love his music, but really, you know, he's kind of has got no sense of humour. Or not. He has a very dark, cynical sense of humour. But he didn't see the fun in it at all. I kind of think he felt that this was our big statement. But so I did write to him and tell him. But he just said that what he said was meant to be off the record, which didn't exactly make it any better.
Driving the Last Bike was a slightly interesting thing for us in a way, because it had always been on previous albums, only the previous 3 or 4, the long songs. Tony writes the lyrics for the long songs and, you know, all the rest of it. And on this one, Phil said, well, let me have a go. I'd like to try a long song. So he said, okay. I said, well, let's Drive the Last Bike, why not, you know. And so he wrote a lyric, which I think was, from his point of view, he really enjoyed doing, because you could stretch a little bit more and write more of a story and bring in other ideas. This is what you can do on a long song. You've got, and also instrumental things kind of illustrate things, you know. You've got the nice sort of mechanical bit in the middle of that where the sort of everything's going. And I think when you're writing a lyric like that, you listen to the song and little ideas come at you from it. And so I think it has a different character from sort of things like Domino, Home by the Sea, where I tend to get slightly more intense, you know. He's got a slightly different approach. I think it works quite nicely.
Waving goodbye as I left in tears, remembering all we'd said.
I love that song. I mean, I sang the melodies to what the music, the chords that Tony was playing, and I ended up being sent this book, actually, coincidentally around the same time, called the Railway Navvies, and I read it, and the idea, the things you never think about, you know, like the railways, you know, you go through a tunnel, and, you know, on a train, you don't think anything of it. Then you think of how that tunnel was built, way back in the 1800s, how many people were killed making the tunnel when the tunnel collapsed, or there was, you know, the explosions to move, you know. So I just wrote this song about these people that just went off and left their families and maybe never come back. I mean, it wasn't war, this was just building a railway, you know. So, you know, songs like that I really, really loved, and I kind of was really proud of my work on We Can't Dance.
The last 3 albums, Genesis, Invisible Touch with Phil, and We Can't Dance, I just remember the writing of them being a real pleasure to do. Fast, easy, really, really creative, you know, things just came out.
There were a lot of good moments on it, really, and we were very confident at this stage. And I did feel when we finished this record, probably any time in my career, I thought, well, I think this is going to do very well, this album. You know, every other time I've always had a bit of trepidation, but this time I felt pretty good.